by getting an extra round of trump. Now again, these are unlikely scenarios, right? Unlikely that you're going to spear the singleton king offside when you play your ace, because the odds say that's not going to happen very often, right? Unlikely that your opponents had a rough coming. If they had a singleton diamond, they might have tried that lead to start off. Although I think normally ace from ace king would be a better lead. Get a look at the dummy to figure out what you want to do. But the idea is be willing to do something anti-percentage. Normally it would not be right to not take your spade finish, right? Because you're in a 9-card fit missing the king, but you have everything else. So yeah, so the idea here is that you're thinking about not just what's going on at your table, but what's going on around the room. I was telling somebody the story recently of a hand that I played years ago when Denver Metro was at its previous location. And I was in the 3-no trump where I had, the dummy had 6 clubs to the ace 10-9, something like that. And I had like 3 to the king. So I'm missing the queen and jack. So absent any other information, I'm going to play for the clubs to break 2-2 and my whole club suit to come in. Now the opening lead against 3-no, they had hit my weakest suit. So if I gave up the lead, I was in trouble. Well, what happened was I played my king and I saw the jack drop or the queen drop, so I wanted the honors drop. All right, well this is what's called restricted choice position, and the correct play is to then finesse the 10. Because that's probably a single. It could have been from Queen Jack Doubleton. But odds are that was the only card that my opponent could play. So I made the percentage play, I took the finesse, and of course lost to the queen. It was Queen Jack Doubleton. And I went down 2. And so I immediately looked around the room to see everybody who was sitting in my seat. I'm like, well, is anybody going to save me any match points? Wondering who else is going to be in 3-no going set playing the hand the correct way. Because I knew there were going to be people around the room playing the hand incorrectly and getting rewarded and making their contract. So at the end of the session, I had noticed that Flo Newland was in my seat. So I went and said, hey, Flo, did you go down in 3-no on board 3, taking the restricted choice play? And I wanted her to say yes, thinking that I had been saved a half a match point. And she said, oh no, Cal and I had a bidding misunderstanding on that hand. We missed game. And so I told her what happened at my table, and her response was, well, a little knowledge is very dangerous sometimes. Sometimes you know too much for your own good. So, I want to make a couple comments about defense, and not going to say a whole lot about this, except kind of point out really one key difference. Matchpoint strategy for defenders. In general, I think you should be more willing to defend passively when you play match points. And those of you who recently did the defense class, we talked about situations where you want to attack, where you bang down honors or lead away from honors, make attacking leads. And I'm not saying that if the auction screams for an attacking lead, I'm not saying get away from that. But if you're on the fence, if you're not sure, at match points, it tends to be best to go passive. In other words, try and make a lead that doesn't give anything away. Sometimes against a suit contract, sometimes that's a trump. A trump lead can be a very safe lead. You're not leading trump because you're in doubt. You're leading trump because it looks like the least likely to give anything away, rather than risking, say, leading away from a king or leading away from a queen or something like that. Because even if there is a line of defense to beat the hand, but it takes doing something speculative or something risky, at match points you typically don't want to do it. And if that means the contract makes, but you prevent over tricks, then that is your goal. So you want to be very, very careful about that as a defender. Really think about, trying to go with a passive approach to the defense, probably more often than attacking. For those of you who haven't done defense class, do you know what, when we talk about passive versus an active or attacking defense, are you comfortable with those terms? Because a lot of times I see, people here, they get bad advice like, I heard you should never lead away from a king. Well, it's situational. That's bad advice. You shouldn't follow a mantra that you never lead away from a king. But you should be very careful about the situations in which you do lead away. And if your right-hand opponent opened 1 no trump, or opened 2 no trump, or jump shifted, or did something that indicated a really strong hand, that's usually a situation where it's a bad idea to lead away from a king when you're leading into a really strong hand. On the other hand, there will be some other options where the opponents don't bid very much, and so your partner is probably marked with some values, and then where it's a lot safer to lead away from an honor because your partner might actually have something in that suit. So that's really what we're getting. On the other hand, if you find yourself playing teams, if you're pretty sure that the opponents are in a rock solid game, and that there's only one lie of the cards that would beat the game, you're like, well, I need partner to have this card, otherwise we're never beating the game. And this doesn't necessarily have to happen on opening lead, it can happen in the middle of the hand. You're looking at this dummy and you're like, well, doesn't look like we're beating this one, but if partner has this one card, I have king double, I have a trump left, I have king double. I can't see the queen or ace or any other cards in that suit. Could partner have the ace of this suit and give me a rough? Highly unlikely. But if that's the only way that would beat the hand, then you do it. And if you give away an over trick as a result, no big deal. But that's for team play. Too risky at match points. So I really don't have much else to say about defense at match points other than that. So does anybody have any questions about what we've hit on so far? Yeah.
Do you consider vulnerability when you're looking at whether to attack or be passive?
No.
Okay.
No. Vulnerability is for your bidding decisions. Not, once the auction's over and and the contract is what it is, your job is to defend as well as possible. And toward the top of that list at match points is, again, not always beating a contract, but limiting overtrades. So that becomes your priority. So, because look, if they're in 3-0 and you find the line of defense to beat it, or you find the line to hold 3-0 to 3, when other declares are possibly making 4 and 5, the vulnerability won't matter because you're getting the match points just by doing what you did. The hand over here, it's been a couple of months that was I Denise? I don't remember. I was playing against Paul, sitting right here in this table, right in the middle. I was sitting in the seat where Peggy is, and Paul was declaring 3 no trump. And based on what was in my hand and the fact that my opponents had bid the game, there just wasn't room for. Partner had already shown up with maybe a queen, and there just wasn't room for her to have much of anything else. So I'm looking at my hand, I'm looking at the dummy, and trying to figure out what's in Paul's hand because he has the closed hand as declared. And I'm working this through, trying to figure out if there's any way to beat this hand. And I arrived at, no, we can't beat this hand. And I cashed out. And when I cashed my last winner, and the best I could do was hold 3-0 to 3, and Paul looked at me and he said, that was great defense. If you didn't do that, I was just about to make 5. So sometimes you recognize situations like that, and we got a good result. You think, well, we didn't beat the game. Did we really get that good of we got a great match point result? Because other people didn't recognize the cash out situation. They didn't realize, hey, we have to give up on trying to beat this game. Ain't happening. We got to take whatever tricks we have coming before they go away. So yeah, that should be your mode of thinking from a defensive side. I want to start to move into bidding, and by the way, probably a little before 11, I do want to take about a 10-minute break or so in the middle and give people a chance to get up the bathroom and get coffee and all that before we come back with more. But what I want to get to before that midpoint is I want to talk about what I call the 200 threshold. And this is referenced on your handout, but it does not have any detail about just what do we mean.
I know what it says. Be aware. Okay, be very afraid.
So what do we mean?
Chicken.
Well, if at all possible, we never want that score on our scorecard. No, we don't want minus 500 or minus 800 or minus 1100 either. But when those happen, when we get doubled and go for a big number, that's one of those, that's an isolated excursion, or somebody just made a really bad decision, or you really got a horrible lie of the cards. Yeah, obviously those tend to be really bad match point results. But among the more common match point results, your bidding decisions in competitive auctions, where we have 3 or all 4 people at the table bidding, especially, one side finds a fit somewhere and another side finds a fit somewhere, and we're trying to compete for the contract. If your score ends up being minus 200, you are probably getting a bad one. And so your decisions in the auction should be based on, is there a danger that we will go down 200? Why do I specify exactly 200? So the way that we usually see a score of 200, one of 2 ways, right? You went set 2 tricks and you were vulnerable. Or you went set 2 tricks non-vulnerable, but you were doubled, which would actually be 300, even worse than 200. Down 1, if you're non-vulnerable then double, down 1, that's only 100, right? So that's not too bad. So, actually what I meant was down 1. Down 2 vulnerable, not double, or down 1 vulnerable, but double. Those are the ways that we typically see minus 200, right? If you're vulnerable and you go down 2 on a part score, your opponents didn't even need to double you. They probably already got close to a top 4. Now, sometimes we go minus 200 and it's not the bad 200. It could be the opponents missed a game, right? And they played 2 spades making 5, right? That's another way to get to 200. But that's not a bad 200, right? Because they played a spot where they had a fit and they had 11 tricks. But usually we see this score when we have either competed too high or maybe competed to a reasonable level, but got a bad lie of the cards. And of course, there's no way to predict a really bad lie of the cards, so every finesse failed kind of thing. But if we think about, if we let the opponents play their parts, whatever it is, a major, a minor, even no trump, all of these very common scores that we see on part score hands. That's why 200 is the kiss of death, right? It's a worse match point result than any of those making part scores. And so if I'm in a competitive auction, and this is why you always want to be paying close attention to the vulnerability. You know, you're trying as best you can, again, based on my hand, partner's bidding, the vulnerability, all this stuff. What you're trying to assess is there danger that I will go down 200? If I bid once more, right? They bid hearts, we bid spades. Now they competed to 3 hearts. Should I bid 3 spades? The question you're asking yourself, if you're vulnerable, is can I get out for down 1? And am I pretty sure they won't double? Those are the kinds of questions you're asking. And if you can see, you know, if it looks to you like down 2 is a very real possibility, in that case, you sell out and you let them play 3 hearts. And you don't care whether 3 hearts makes or doesn't make, you don't care. Because your competing to 3 spades was going to be too costly. And you know, you don't want to rely on misdefense, right? I mean, that has happened sometimes. Yeah, it's a man where I'm like the dummy hit, and I'm like, boy, I'm headed for down 2. This is a 0. And then the opponent's misdefended, and I got out for down 1, and so I escaped with a result that wasn't so bad, but I deserved a 0. So, but I don't want to count on it, right? I don't want to count on poor defense, even though there's plenty of it out there. And keep in mind that your opponents are not inclined to double you in a part score very often, right? I mean, everybody's fearful. I mean, and we talk about that. Yes, certainly you don't want to double part score. I mean, doubling part scores for penalty at team play is extremely rare because that is very dangerous. Because if the part score makes and you've doubled them in the game, that's an imp catastrophe for playing teams. But again, at match points, just one board. So while people are more likely at match points perhaps to make a speculative penalty double of a part score, a lot of people are still pretty gun shy, and they need to really feel confident that they have this thing set before they double. So you're probably not going to get penalized in part scores that often. And then, of course, if you're non-vulnerable, if you go down 2 undoubled, that's only 100. If you go down 1 and you're doubled, it's still only 100. So you can do a lot of things when you are non-vulnerable that you wouldn't want to do if you were vulnerable. And that is all the chart that is at the top of your handout, that little table. That's why I put that together just to kind of give you a guideline of all 4 possible vulnerability conditions and how you should behave in competitive auctions under those different conditions. Moving from unfavorable, equal, vulnerable, equal, non-vulnerable, and then favorable. So that would be reverse. That would be graduating from be most conservative to be most liberal with your. One other thing that I think kind of fits in with this, where people might find themselves in trouble with that 200 threshold. So I suspect most people in here. How many people in here are familiar with the law of total tricks? The law of total tricks? Even if you haven't read Larry Cohen's book, but familiar with the concept and how it works. And bidding to the level of your trump fit.